What is up, my nerds? Welcome back to another episode of the Nerdy Mind. Jason is back on the podcast.
How
What's
you
up,
doing?
Jason? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. Doing all right. Hey, man, it's a good time to be a nerd, would you say?
Oh yeah.
We have a lot of good things coming out this year. I would say in probably next couple weeks, months.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things coming out. Have you ever played? Did you ever play Final Fantasy at all?
As a kid, I played Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles on my GameCube. I think I
GameCube,
played a
yep.
little bit of Final Fantasy VII, but
Okay.
that's about it.
Okay, yeah, Final Fantasy VII is actually my favorite one.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of controversial because people are like, "Of course, Seven's your favorite." It's a lot of people's favorite.
Mhm.
But
I mean,
I've always loved Final Fantasy VII. The story of it all, it's really fun. If you've never played Final Fantasy VII, essentially, there's the main character Cloud who has memories of things that he thought he did, but it's actually his friend Zack who actually did it, and he comes to this turmoil battle with himself, trying to figure out who he is as a person while trying to stop the evil villain named Sephiroth from destroying the world. It's also kind of weird because the ragtag group he's with is like eco-terrorists, essentially. Like they're trying to like protect the Earth because
right.
like it's like a major corporation who's like draining the Earth of its life force called, the life stream is what it's called. So it's actually kind of funny that it's like about terrorism, but I don't know. Maybe
It's
not
one of those
funny.
things. Like when I was playing, it was definitely like an undercurrent for a little bit. Like I didn't realize what that was, and then I was like, "Oh,
Hmm.
okay, that's interesting." It kind of comes and goes or whatever, but yeah. And I mean, like you said, it might be controversial to, quote unquote controversial to kind of pick like my favorite is this one, but a lot of people like it. A lot of people like it for a reason, though. Like if
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of people like it, there's a reason. So
It's
that's
a
what it
great
is.
story. I mean, there's a lot of them that I do love. Like I love one obviously because it started it all.
Mhm.
I think 7, 9, and 10 are my close favorites. And then coming into the new adaptation of 15, which was really fun. And then I'm really excited for 16.
Right, that comes out soon, right?
Yeah. 15 was cool because it kind of took a little step forwards into the future where you could like drive a car, and then they added a whole new different battle style where implemented it. But I'm really excited for 16 because now they're taking a step back and they're going more into the medieval style, like your swords and shields again. But it still has the same, like I guess same battle style as 15 does. So it's really cool. Did you ever play 15 or at
I
all?
have not. I didn't realize it was like that different from the other ones that I had played. I might have to go play that then.
Yeah. It's really fun. Really try it out. It's definitely it's actually pretty fun sometimes because like you'll just like be world running around, and then you'll be just driving the car, and then I always upgraded the car to where it could go off road and stuff like that because I hated leaving the car on the highway and then
Yeah,
like walking out into like the desert and
I
like
could see
fighting a
that.
monster. And then like have to travel all the way back to the car. So it was like one of the first things I upgraded was the car to go off roading. But yeah, so 16 is really cool. It's just kind of like taking a step back. I'm always a fan of like the medieval style type of games.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's a soft spot in my heart. I don't
Yeah,
know. I always imagine myself with a sword and shield and armor and doing all kinds of cool
hey
quests.
man.
Um, but Final Fantasy VII is the second part is coming out this winter.
Right.
The remake. So I played the remake, and they took the remake from the original game. They had the same characters, sort of the same story, but then
Mhm.
they kind of spinned off, and it's kind of doing a new thing to kind of keep it fresh.
Right.
Um,
I remember playing the remake a couple years back, I want to say,
okay.
and my buddy that I was like playing the remake, and he was kind of like we were both kind of playing it. He was like, "You got to play the original," and I played the original. I think I played the original all the way through, and I don't think I finished the remake. And I was like, I kind of like the original better, but I realized the storylines were like slightly different. Things were slightly different.
Hmm.
I was like, I can see why people like the remake. I can see why people like the original, but yeah.
Um, the reason why I love the remake though is because nothing against turn-based fighting games or turn-based RPGs. I
Mhm.
love them. They have a great spot in my heart. I think I'm just kind of past that though.
Yeah.
Turn-based is kind of like I have to have the patience for it.
Right.
Um, that's why I think I love the remake so much, is because like it's like a kind of a slash 'em up type of
Mhm.
game when running through and do the thing. But what about the original? Did you like the most? Like why did you like the original over the remake?
I don't know. I think it was just kind of like because I think I played 7 when it came out, like a little bit. I think my brother kind of got me to play it, and like it just kind of was like a little nostalgic to go back and play like an older style of game, like you said, the turn based stuff. I'm not like if I was gonna get into a game and play it for the long term, turn based is like you said. I'm kind of past that. The thing about a turn based like fighting system is that kind of has to be like the center point of the game, like
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon, when you play Pokemon and you're fighting each other and it's like this person goes first and you go and kind of back and forth. It makes sense, but that's kind of the entire thing of the Pokemon games is like battling as Pokemon. Like
Yeah.
Final
Right.
Fantasy has all this story undercurrent and you're going on these like quests and kind of stuff. Like you're kind of like going through the storyline. Then you're just fighting something. It's like I don't have the patience to like sit there and you attack and then I gotta wait and then this guy is gonna get knocked out and whatever. It's like I just want to get done with this battle to go on to the next thing. So like I get that can be kind of frustrating. Again, I
Yeah.
didn't play through the remake that much, so I might have kind of I guess backed out of it before getting to a good part or something. But like I just started playing the original because he was like, no, you got to play the original first, and I got through that and I enjoyed it.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's why I love the original too, though, is because of the nostalgia
Mm-hmm.
feeling, maybe. Because I mean, I played it on the PS1, so
Mm-hmm.
I just it has that part of me. But I don't know if I could. Maybe I could sit through it again and replay it, but I don't know. I say that now, but then I probably start it and then probably not finish it.
I mean, but at the same time too, like you said, like the second part of the remake is coming out. Like
Yeah.
it's more of a draw to like try the new thing because it's coming out,
Hmm.
it's new, it's like I haven't done this before. Rather than going back and being like, oh, the second part came out, let me go back and play the original again. It's like
Yeah.
you know,
Which is as you know, like with the original, once you get past Midgar, like
mm-hmm.
after you get out of like the main city,
Mm-hmm.
and there's such a huge world to the game
Mm-hmm.
that like you get the airship and you get to travel around and do all kinds of cool stuff. The second one, you finally get to leave Midgar.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the second remake part, we're finally get to leave Midgar, and supposedly they said like it's a huge open world. So meaning like it isn't going to be like where it's cutscene to travel, like you're going to be in the next place. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're actually going to have to like get there.
Oh,
Um,
that's
and like
interesting.
so I'm really excited for that
Yeah.
because how Final Fantasy's been going, where like how you travel with this open world, you either get a vehicle or you actually do certain things to get to where you need to go. I'm really excited to actually see Final Fantasy VII's open world in a like new HD aspect
Right.
of it all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's
So
it's one of those things where graphics don't make the game. But if you already
mhm.
have like a solid fan base and you already have like a solid storyline and everything, and then you up the graphics, it's always one of those things where like I got to play this. Like even though it might be the exact same thing as the other one, like The Last of Us, when they make the remake and they make
Yeah,
everything nice and clear and crystal.
right.
It's like I might already know the storyline. I might have already played the game. I want to play the new one because it looks so much better, so fluid. The graphics are amazing. It's like it is a draw. So like
Yeah.
seeing that in that open world aspect, and then all the graphic update and everything, it's should be pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's cool too is that like if you like the lore, like the storyline of Final Fantasy VII, there was a side story game on the PSP
Mm-hmm.
called Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, which essentially is the story of Zack, who's the guy who's the
Right.
soldier who actually did all the things that Cloud thinks he did.
Mm-hmm.
And actually you go through his actual journey from like a second class soldier to first class,
Mm.
and do all the things that Cloud remembers throughout the game. They're actually remaking that now,
Huh.
remaking it, and it's coming out, I think, before Rebirth
Okay.
too. So I recommend if they stay true to what the original game was, I recommend playing the Crisis Core game because it's so good. It's such an underrated Final Fantasy game. Honestly, the PSP in general was an underrated system.
Yeah.
I kind of had a debate with someone at my job who's a nerd as well, where they were like, the PSP kind of sucked. I was like, did you have a PSP? And they're like, no. I was like, well, then you wouldn't understand. Like, the PSP was like an underrated system.
Yeah, I never had one myself. My brother had one, and like every time I played with it, I was just always like, this thing is awesome. Like, it was just so crazy to me because like I had Game Boys, I had like I had consoles and stuff, but like the handheld console, everything about it just seemed so awesome to me. But it not being my system and like it's only his games and stuff, I was like, I wish I had like my own. But at the time, I was young enough that I was like, I don't really have the money to do this, and if I wanted to save up money and stuff, it would take me a while. And I was like, I'll just skip past it. I'll just try to borrow his and play some games here and there. But I always thought it was really interesting. I know a lot of people didn't like the PSP, but I didn't see why. It's not like the Wii U.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So like, that's what's funny is because like I actually still have my original 2000 still, the PSP 2000. It's a little beaten up. It probably needs a new screen now because it's starting to dim a little bit. But I still have it for a reason. Like, that thing is a juggernaut to me. Well, so they had not only did they have like the little disc games that came with it, and like you could buy movies out of like the discs and stuff. But I essentially put custom firmware on the PSP because this thing had such a cult following on the underground that there were people that were doing programming stuff for the PSP where you could download it on your old scan disc. You remember those old scan disc microchips that you could like? They were like the long before flash drives, essentially.
Yeah.
So they were like little like little chips that they were special ones that you had to buy for the PSP. You could plug them into the computer, and I could download this code off of the internet, and it allowed me to literally download emulators onto my PSP. So the PSP not only was like a portable, I could play Game Boy Color Advance, SP games. It became like a multi-facet system all in one because of how far advanced the system was. Like, I'm not even trying to sound like a Sony fanboy right now, but for a long time I was a Sony fanboy, but it was such ahead of its time that I even made the point that I think the PSP made kind of like the handheld market kind of progress further from there.
Yeah.
Because like, Nintendo had the Game Boy and they had like the DS and stuff like that. Yeah, they were kind of like doing their thing. But I think for me, when Nintendo saw what Sony kind of did with the PSP, they were like, okay, we need to make a handheld system that's like even next level.
I want to say almost. And again, like, I didn't have that PSP. I didn't have it all the time on me or anything. I wasn't playing it a ton. But from the memory I have of it, it felt like a decent bump up from like a Game Boy. Because like at the time, again, just the way things progress, the way technology progresses over time, things get smaller and smaller. Like, for instance, there's the Steam Deck now, which is like a fully functional gaming PC in a console, like the size of a Switch. Right. Like, things are going to get smaller, more compact, like easier to carry with you and stuff. But like back then, like the Game Boy was like a portable console, but it was very small, minimal. You're basically just playing these like small games, nothing crazy. Like, you're playing Pokemon and stuff. Like, again, the turn-based kind of like pretty easy to get around and whatever. PSP kind of took it to another level where it was almost like playing on a console, but smaller and in your hand.
Right.
It still was a portable console, but it almost felt like a true console, but in your hand.
Yeah.
And so like that, like, I can see what you're saying. I think it did kind of drive like, okay, we're not going to just do this as like a little gimmick thing where people can bring this when they're traveling. Like, let's make it like it's an actual system they bring with you, And now you got like the 3DSs and stuff like that like play legitimate games that you could play on like the Switch or on the Wii or whatever. It's like, dedicated.
Yeah. But yeah. I remember playing my PSP more than I played like my PS2 sometimes because I was just like, I really didn't want to be stationary. Like, there was because like sometimes I wanted to watch TV while I was playing games or something like that. So like
Yeah.
with the PSP, like it wasn't just like the Game Boy how it had like a D-pad. It actually had like an actual
Yeah, the little analog stick.
analog stick, and made it more fluent with RPG games. And the graphics for the time on those, I would say on that system was pretty decent for where we were at.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. Sorry, I'm not trying to like fan out on the PSP right now, but
I mean, that's what this podcast is about, right? Just being nerdy.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, yeah. But I remember putting countless hours into Crisis Core.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually really really looking forward to the remake of that, because that game definitely has a small spot in my heart for that. Only because of how much I love Final Fantasy VII, and kind of getting like, I like having deep dives on lore of certain things.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying when you said that Crisis Core is going to get a remake, that almost kind of drives me to want to do that, and then also play the remake part 1 and 2. Even though, like, again, I'm not like super into Final Fantasy, like just playing through 7 and like seeing all the memories and stuff, and like you said, it's actually Zach's memories, and then being like, you can play the actual storyline of the memories that you're seeing, like that is interesting to me. And if I can get a remake of that, play that, then I might actually go back and play part 1 and 2. And
yeah. I mean, because it kind of makes it, because that way you don't have questions.
Yeah.
I always hate playing a game and then you have questions like, well, why is this happening?
Right.
Why is he acting like this? Like,
if it's one of those things where like the game leaves you with questions, but it's because the next game is going to answer them, and you're like, oh man, I got to wait a whole year, and then like now everything's answered. That makes sense. But if it's just kind of like I've got so many questions, let's go on to the next story. It's like, where are my answers? Like I need the answers. Yeah. And so like you said, if there's a follow-up game that might not be like part 2 or part 3, but it's like another game that answers those, it's like, I'm definitely going to play that and see what's going on. And
yeah,
I need to know.
Yeah, and like and Final Fantasy VII had such a cult following too, that where they made a movie.
Right.
They made a movie to it. It's called Advent Children, and it's in my lineup of Blu-rays I have upstairs in my living room. Have digital copies. I love playing the game, and then like after I beat the game, then I'll watch Advent Children, because it's like it's supposed to be like years later after they finally defeat Sephiroth and stuff like that. And you know, if you've never seen it, you could definitely. Oh, dude, me and you are gonna watch it. It's really good. The art style is amazing. It's like it's kind of like it's animated. Obviously, it's not like a live action, but the animation of it is so clean, because it's like it's not like anime drawn like style. It's more of like computer generated stuff.
Gotcha.
Like CGI. That it's so clean and it's so good. Gotcha. Especially if you know the story of the game.
Not to derail us here for a second, but speaking of movies, Boogeyman. So I heard from a friend that is the movie to see, and I'm not a huge horror movie person. I do occasionally like watching horror movies. I gotta watch them if it's at home or whatever. I gotta watch it during the day, because if I'm watching it at night, it just gets like way more intense for me. But like, he's telling me I gotta see it in theaters, and I'm like, I'm interested. So if anyone's watching this on YouTube, you gotta comment and let me know if I actually need to see this thing or not, because it's interesting, but it's kind of freaking me out a little bit.
Well, I can tell you this, dude. My sister loves horror movies, like deathly loves them. And my niece now, who's like 4 years old, loves them. She can like I tell my sister, I'm like, what are you turning that girl into? Because she's gonna be like demented. She can sit down and watch them and like laugh at them or whatever. Like she gets a little scared, but then she like walks around like with creepy voices and stuff. And they're like, "Oh my god!" Like stop. And seems like my sister calls me a baby.
Seems like the 4-year-old you need when you're in a horror movie and you're like, "Oh no, there's something going on here." They're like, "Don't worry, I got this." You're like, "Oh, okay."
Like, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Me, I cannot watch horror movies. I think the last horror movie I seen was It. The remake, It, part 1 and 2.
Part 1 and 2. Okay.
And I don't know why it possessed me to go see that movie, because I'm terrified of clowns. As you've probably heard in previous episodes.
I don't know if you know this actually, but the Boogeyman, apparently, because I found this out because I hadn't really looked into it that much. It's actually based on a Stephen King book called Boogeyman.
Oh, really?
And so you saying It chapter 1 and 2, that's a Stephen King. and I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a big Stephen King guy. I've read like
Oh, really?
almost all the books. I'm not gonna claim I've read all of them, but I've read, I don't know,
A fair amount.
a lot, like
Yeah.
upwards of 30, maybe upwards of 40 even. I don't even know. I don't know how many there are, but I've read a lot of them, all the short story books, all that kind of stuff. So I haven't read The Boogeyman, and I didn't even know that there was a Stephen King book called The Boogeyman, so I might need to read that. But knowing that this is based off of that, I'm like, that's another reason why I gotta see it.
Yeah, not to go on a quick tangent, but Stephen King has a demented imagination
Mhm.
because of the shit he used to come up. Not only that, fun fact, if you did not know this, Stephen King would get high as shit
Yeah,
and write.
he had a big cocaine problem.
Yeah.
He was also had a big alcohol problem for a while too.
Mm-hmm.
You know The Shining? I don't know if you've ever.
Yeah.
So I don't know if
Yeah.
you probably haven't read it. I'm in the process of reading it right now, but the whole kind of premise of it is actually it's Stephen King kind of going into his own mind when he was like an alcoholic at the time, and
Mhm.
kind of putting this character, the father character in there
Right.
is an alcoholic.
Right.
And so he's kind of like almost kind of making this guy seem like a horrible dad and stuff for being an alcoholic, and like what he's struggling with, and he's being an asshole and stuff, and it's actually a reflection of how he's feeling without him even kind of realizing it, really, because at the time he didn't even kind of know he had an addiction.
Right.
But yeah, no, he had cocaine problems, he had alcohol problems, but he's come up with some crazy stuff.
I heard this in a different other podcast where they were like talking about Stephen King's writing, like
Mhm.
when he was high, like he'd lock himself in like a room
Mhm.
and he'd be like high as crap and like writing and crazy, and like people were saying like with him being sober now, like his writing isn't as good, I guess, as when
The stuff he's coming
mean,
out with, like in more recent years, is, I mean, it's good. There's definitely like some of like the scarier stuff he's written, because that's one of those things. Is I think I was listening to a podcast where they basically have been reviewing Stephen King books. It's like a literary analysis kind of thing, and they
Okay.
said like it's one of these things where once you've written a certain amount of books in a certain genre, everyone just thinks of you as that person for the rest of your life. So if you like wrote like 5 romance novels, and then you went on and started writing other things, historical fiction, blah blah blah, you're a romance novelist. And because Stephen King, his first couple of books were like scary books, they were kind of like horror based, he's a horror author, but like he's written so many things from there on that like aren't horror related and like are very different, and like, and it's just interesting that like people think he's a horror novelist. Some of the stuff he's written is actually pretty scary, and like actually like when I'm reading it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's actually getting to me. But yeah, in the more recent years, it's definitely toned down a little bit. But he's also kind of like changing directions with like the kind of stuff he's writing. So it's not supposed to be as gripping and thrilling. Probably it's just supposed to be kind of a different mix of emotions. But yeah, no, definitely when he was in the cocaine era, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, he's probably like just going nuts. Like he's probably I can imagine him like being in isn't no Stephen King story Room 24 or something like that, like where like a dude's like he's like an author trapped in a where he's not trapped in a hotel room, but
I know what you're talking about. I know what it's room, and then the room number, and it's like, I want to say it's like 24001 or 2409 or something. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, he's trapped in a well, like you said, not trapped, but it's a hotel room, and he's an author. Yeah, no, I want to say I read that one, but it was a while ago.
I just imagine him being in like trapped in like a stayed in like a room high as shit, and he's like having these like ideas flow in his mind.
Yeah.
He's like a wire yarn going from this idea and like having like a spider web of things.
An interesting thing about him too is, so he wrote a series called the Dark Tower series. It's one of my favorite. It is my favorite series of all time. But it's supposed to be like an amalgamation of like all stories. So it's like it's just supposed to be this story at the core, but like the characters kind of end up like, there's a period of it where they end up in like the Wizard of Oz kind of thing. Like they're in our world in Kansas, but there's like some Wizard of Oz aspects to it that are kind of like weird to explain. There's like just all kinds of stuff going on, but there's like little parts of his books that kind of link to other ones of his books.
Yeah.
Like I want to say it was 11/22/63, which is the one where it's supposed to be a guy goes back in time and tries to stop the Kennedy assassination. there's
Okay.
a reference to it in that book. Because
Oh,
he ends
really?
up in the town. He goes up to Maine, and he ends up in the town where, Pennywise is
Jerry.
killing children,
Jerry, yeah.
and he actually meets with the kids from the. I don't know if it's the kids from the book. I want to say it's Bev and Richie, maybe. Yeah, it's Bev and Richie, and he sits down and he talks with them at some point, and they're telling him about how kids have gone missing and stuff, but they have a plan and they're going to try to like help things. And it's just like weird
Oh,
because like
wow.
he references other ones of his books in his books because almost all of his books revolve around somebody who's an author.
Oh, okay.
Like a lot of them are literally someone who's a writer is the main character,
Mhm.
and almost all of them
Mm.
take place in Maine. So like it makes sense that a
Mm.
lot of these are like interlinked in some way.
I also know that a lot of his books are kind of like a universe too. Like it's weird that people to think like that, but it is they are linked. Like it
Mhm.
is linked to The Shining
Mhm.
because like that's the whole point of why the kids were able to beat it was because they had the powers.
There's there's a lot of there's like other books that characters kind of have like so The Shining is like an actual ability.
Mhm.
It's like almost like a telepathy kind of thing, and like it's like a weird kind of thing. It's not necessarily telepathy, but it's like a mental strength, a mental power. And so like there are like different books that kind of reference that or people kind of having abilities similar to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of all big Stephen King universe, which is interesting.
Well, back to what you were saying about the boogeyman type thing. So like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I can watch that, dude. I really don't. Like to sit down in a chair and just put myself into to torture myself, like to self-inflict mental harm on myself. I don't know if I can do it.
So, what I want to ask, and I want to ask you, and I want to ask the people listening to this, do you have something you do when you're watching a scary movie? Like, do you have to like peek through your fingers? Like, I'm weird. I have to cover my ears in scenes. Like, if I know there's a jump scare, the thing could pop out of nowhere at the screen. If I'm covering my ears, I'm fine. I don't care that it popped out at my face.
I think it's more
Doesn't
the
bother me.
music. It's the music,
exactly.
it's the noise.
It's like the build, and then the way they jump out. My buddy is like the opposite. Like he's fine with like the jump scare like noise, but like he has to like kind of like peek through his fingers, and he doesn't jump, and he's like, okay, I'm good. And I'm like, that gets me. It's like the like hearing the thing jump out of the closet, or whatever, and you're like, oh my gosh. Like if I just cover my ears, I'm like, whoa, wow.
No, it's definitely the sight for me.
Mm.
Noise doesn't bother. I mean, obviously, loud things can bother people, but the noise doesn't really bother me. It's the sight of something is what gets me. I don't know if it's just my natural instincts of fear built in, but me seeing that, like, there's a scene. Spoilers, but if you haven't seen it, it's kind of your fault. Sorry to be like that, but scene of it too, part 2, where there's a little girl. They're at like a football game or something like that, and the little girl sees like a firefly go under the bleachers.
Yeah,
so she starts chasing it.
That was a creepy scene.
And
Pennywise is down under there, and he's like drooling a little bit, and
oh, I'm sorry, that's part 1. And like,
right,
and she's like talking to him. He comes out of the shadows, and then you can see him drool, and she's like counting for him. And as soon as he gets to she gets to 2, she bites her head.
Yeah, he just like
and
his mouth just gets big, and he just bites her like over her face.
Yeah. Seeing that terrified the shit out of me.
So I wasn't that scared watching that movie. There was like I think at least one scene that kind of made me jump a little bit in the theaters, but like there were scenes like that where like that's the kind of scene that makes you shit your pants. Like you're just like seeing the thing bite something's face. You're like, oh my gosh, or like Georgie at the very beginning where he's like, Pennywise just like bites his like arm off, and then his hand just starts coming out of like the sewer and like grabs him and pulls him in. It's like that's terrifying.
What's even worse though is because I watched the original movie. That was on the movie series on TV.
It's like the split movie series.
Where Nicole she's never seen it. So when we went to go see it together, I'm sitting there like curled up like this, and she's like, "What's about to happen?" I'm like, "Just no."
Yeah.
And I like because I just don't know what like way they're gonna go about doing it because I know what they do in the movie the old movie.
Right.
So
Yeah.
movies nowadays, they gotta make them scarier. They gotta make them more thrilling. They gotta make them more.
So it's interesting to me that you've seen the original one too. So how do you which Pennywise do you think is better? Like, I know based on the people who've read the books, they might feel one way or the other. But I'm curious, like, which one did you like more? Or like the style of and whatever. Just maybe which one was scarier to you?
Okay. The original one is the one thing that gave me fear of clowns.
Okay.
That and Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Mm-hmm.
Those two movies were definitely the movies that like gave me the fear of clowns.
Yeah.
But if I were to compare the original It to the new one, I would say the new one is more demented. It's more demented and terrifying.
So something I saw, like I think it was on Reddit or something recently, people were comparing the two, and one thing they said, which I agree with, is the original one makes more sense for the concept of the movie, because like, can you imagine a little kid nowadays walking up to the new Pennywise and being like, "Hey, you're a clown, will you be my friend?" It's like, no, that thing is scary looking.
Yeah.
Bill Skarsgård looks scary.
Terrifying.
But that old style, it was like, it was a clown and looked like a normal clown, but you could tell something was off. Something's off, but like, I could see a kid walking up to that clown and not being terrified. Nowadays, people are just scared of clowns in general because everything that like scary movies have done with clowns. But like that clown was more approachable. But like, you could see something was going on there. But like the new one, like definitely way more terrifying, way more demented looking.
The old clown I definitely be throwing hands with. You know, definitely be like trying to fight it.
Yeah.
Where the new one, I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out.
You walk into a room and you see that thing in the corner, you're like, goodbye, I'm leaving.
Yeah. Just like, just immediately walk in, see it, walk out, and just keep going to my car and peeling wheels away.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, it was just something about the new movie. Like, if I would have watched the new movie as a kid, I would have even a deeper fear.
Yeah, no, I would imagine too. Like, for me, like the amount of scary movies I've seen, I don't know if I finished reading it. So my brother has a big Stephen King collection, and like he was reading them back when he was like a teenager. So me being a kid and idolizing my big brother, I would read the books he was reading, even though he's 7 years older than me. And I was way too young to be reading stuff like that. I definitely started reading it at some point and was like, it's just, I don't know if you've seen the book, but it's like that thick. It's a very big book. Yeah. I just didn't have the patience to finish it. So like, I knew most of the storyline. I'd seen or read a bunch of the stuff. And so when I saw the miniseries, when I saw the new movies, I knew what to expect. But like, I would say that the new movies, part 1 and 2, would have given me nightmares as a child. I don't know if the original one would have, maybe, but
maybe it's just me. I'm a baby because I had fears of sewer drains for a while.
Well, when did you see that? I couldn't ride
my bike.
Do you know how like around how old you were when you saw that? Because
I was probably definitely like 6 or 7, I think.
Okay. Yeah, because
it had deeper. This sounds messed up, but it's a little bit of child trauma here. My older cousins, who were like my brothers, you know, they were like 15 years older than me, and they like put me in a chair and like strapped me down to this chair and forced me to watch this thing. It sounds horrible.
Taping your eyelids up.
Like, I literally was terrified. And I think that's what added more trauma to it, is being forced to watch something.
I could see that, yeah.
Rather than having it by choice.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if it was by choice, I probably wouldn't have had as much.
I think the first time I saw that miniseries, like, I was probably like 15 or something. Like, it had been like a long time down the road. So I wasn't that young. But like, also by that time, like some of the animation stuff, like Pennywise climbing out of the shower drain, and like it's just a big claymation thing of like pulling like the shower drain open. It just looked so like silly, that like just so unrealistic. But like the new movie, the way things are done, it just like, if they had done things like that, no, I would have had nightmares. But.
Yeah, and like I remember the one scene in part 2 where like it's not Ben. Ben's not the main character. Who's the other character?
Billy.
Billy.
Yeah.
Yeah. when Billy's trying to save the little boy because he like reminds him of his
little brother Georgie. Yep.
So he's like trying to save him
Oh,
because he
in the
knows Pennywise is trying to go
funhouse.
after him. Yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was demented.
And he starts beating his head
he just
against
like
the freaking
smiles
glass.
and then just becomes like a battering ram with his head, just like smack, smack, smack. I was like, oh my gosh.
And then Billy sees him eat the kid,
and then just goes
I'm
dark.
like,
there's just blood.
The problem
and everything's
is
gone. You're like,
wasn't it like he made it a purpose to go after that kid because Billy wanted to protect him?
Yeah,
I think that's what
I would imagine. Yeah, especially because like the scene where like he sees the kid the first time, the kid's like on a skateboard and stuff. He's kind of near the sewer drain, because I don't know if you picked up on it or if they really focused on it, but the house that he's outside of, where when he sees that little kid, is his old house that he grew up.
Oh
in.
yeah.
So like he sees this little kid that reminds him of his little brother in this old house by that sewer drain where his brother got killed.
Right. Yeah.
So he's like, don't go near the sewers. The whole thing is that Pennywise can kind of hear what's going on in the outside world from like the sewers and stuff. So he probably hears this and kind of senses it too, that like Billy's trying to protect this kid. So of course, yeah, no, for sure in that movie, Pennywise was targeting that kid to.
And I think it kind of like I took it as this too, like Pennywise kind of like put in Billy's mind like, hey, you can try all you might, but I'm gonna kill whoever I want, and you're not safe either.
And the whole idea too was just that like, if the kids are scared of Pennywise, of it, that they're feeding its power and stuff. So like, you know, if he even has a little bit of a sense of like, I can't do this, you know, it's too strong. Like that just makes it more powerful. So yeah.
And not to keep continuing on with it, but like they're actually supposedly making a series where it like goes before, like when comes to Derry and like creates.
I know that back when they were making part 2, before part 2, they were gonna have a scene about like way back when it was like Maine was being colonized and stuff. About like when Pennywise first started like stealing children, and it was gonna have like a scene of Pennywise like a woman giving up her infant as like an offering to Pennywise or something, and it was gonna be like him eating a baby, and like it just became like too dark that people were just like, we can't put this in the movie. I didn't hear anything about a series, but I wouldn't be surprised because that movie had so much following after it that like and like that, like you said, like what we talked about before with like the lore of things, like to have like a beginning, like when this started happening, or you know, kind of like way back before this story. Yeah, Stephen King leaves a lot of room for your imagination. He does have some lore in his books, but he also leaves some room to be like, you know, this has been going on since the beginning of time, and you're like, so this has happened before, you know?
Because like he came from a different dimension, right? He came in from a different dimension. It's supposed to come from a universe.
It's supposed to come from outer space, but it's supposed to be this like celestial being. It's this being that's been around since like beginning of time, kind of thing. In the book, it like covers it better.
He's been around since like dinosaurs and stuff like that. Or
yeah, since before then. Yeah, it's just supposed to be this being from the beginning of time, kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah.
To talk about the Boogeyman though, I mean, maybe I'll build up courage. Maybe we can go see it.
Yeah, I'll drag you to the movies. I'll strap you down to a theater.
Be like, hey man, we're gonna go see John Wick. I bought the tickets already. Like, let's go watch a shoot 'em up movie. I'm like, cool.
That is a great plan. I will tell you that I bought John Wick tickets because I also want to see that. So you won't even know.
I do too. Yeah. But dude, I remember watching there was another movie called The Boogeyman a while back.
Yeah, I wanted to say I saw one called The Boogeyman. When I saw the title of it come out, I was like, that sounds familiar. I mean, obviously The Boogeyman is a thing, but like I feel like I saw a movie called The Boogeyman.
So like, did you have was this another fear as a kid of like for you? Like for me, like I couldn't be in a space in the dark. I wasn't scared of the dark, but I couldn't be in an area where it was quiet and like eerie, but also in the dark. Like I just couldn't do it. Like something about me like would turn my neck up. I don't know if it's some type of like sixth sense or whatever, but like I would always so like if I was going from my basement to like my upstairs, I would like hit the lights real quick, and then run as fast as I could.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say that's one of those things that I see on Reddit and stuff where people are like, it's not just me, right? And like in my house, there was a light switch at the top of the stairs and one at the bottom. So I could have easily just walked up to the top, flipped off the switch, and then gone inside. But I would flip off the switch and then run all the way up the stairs, like sprint away, just thinking like as soon as I turn off the light, something's gonna like grab me.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, like we see I had that too at the stairs, but like we had this back room that had like stored all our stuff, but like the light switch was in the middle of the room.
Oh man.
So like for me to go like in there to get something, I had to like be brave enough to like just walk in the dark and then like blindly try to look for the string and and hope nothing was in front of me.
I was gonna say if like the light's on and you're like gotta leave, like you can pull that and run, or you can just be like, you know what? Nah, that's gonna stay on. I'm not doing this. But to have to walk into that dark room to turn on the switch, that's like something in a scary movie where you're gonna pull on the switch and the thing's gonna be standing right in front of you, and you're like, no.
So like, what about the Boogeyman? Why do you want to see it so bad? Like, why?
It's partly because my buddy was getting me back into that. Like, we used to watch these scary movies as like a kid, you know, and like I'd go over to his house, we'd have like a sleepover, and like it'd be pitch black and like in his basement, and we'd just be like watching like The Conjuring or something, and it was just like terrifying. Like, did you ever watch The Conjuring?
Yeah.
You know the hide and go clap thing where like the wardrobe doors open and then like the hands come out and like clap, and then like the person's blindfolded and like, okay, you're in here, and it's like clearly not the children's hands. You're like, what the hell was that? Or like
was The Conjuring, or was The Conjuring the one where like they buy the house?
Yeah, so there's multiple. I think there's like 3 Conjuring movies, but the first one I think it was.
I'm talking about the one.
Yeah, they bought the house. There's like a scene.
The dad's like a truck driver or something like that.
I don't know.
Was it when that. I thought, if I remember correctly, the guy, he was a truck driver, so he wasn't home all the time. That's the way he provided for the family.
Maybe
like,
that's
he was
what
on the
it
road
was.
a lot.
Maybe, yeah.
And then like
was it like a bunch of daughters? There was like 3 or 4 daughters. Yeah,
3 daughters. Yeah. Like one was older.
Right.
There was a middle child and the youngest, and then the mom. Got possessed because like
yes
she like I thought like what happened was like she thought like they were told not to go in like the basement or something like that or like whatever, and she goes in that room.
So there was like this whole thing of like a presence living in the house and stuff, and like I think she gets like she goes down in the basement. There's a lot of scenes in the basement that are terrifying in my opinion, because there's like a scene where she's like she hears something get knocked over in like the darkness, and then a ball just rolls out of the darkness towards her, and it's like, what the heck? Then I think in that same scene, she runs up the stairs and she gets to the top, and the door locks in front of her.
Yeah,
and the lights go out, and she's like got like a match or something. She like does something to turn on a light, and then the hands come out of the darkness and just go.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
So that's the reference to a scene earlier in the movie where like the daughters have a game called Hide and Go Clap, where one of them's blindfolded and they're walking around, and like they'll say clap, and then like everybody claps and they try to figure out where the people are. So she's walking along and she goes into another room and she says clap, and like the wardrobe opens and hands come out from behind the clothes and clap. And then she's walking towards the wardrobe. And then one of the sisters comes in and she's like, what are you doing? We're not even in this room. And she's like, huh? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, she's so terrifying. I remember that.
And like the hand, and then you turn and it goes back to the wardrobe and the hands aren't there.
Yeah. It's like,
and then I also remember that where like, one of the daughters gets possessed real for a little bit. And then like, the youngest one was in like the older one's room or something like that.
Yeah.
And then like the middle child's like on the wall.
Yeah.
And like on top of the wardrobe and like leaps down on the older one.
Yeah. I can't remember if that was like the thing living in the house, the possessed thing, or if it was like the daughter. But I remember that whole thing, them being like terrified of like when they go to sleep and stuff. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I got to go back and rewatch that movie.
Have fun, man. You go at it.
Not gonna sleep, but you know.
Like I think the reason why I don't like horror movies is because my imagination. See, I'm a very creative person, and my imagination is already hyperactive all the time.
Yeah.
Even as an adult, like I know that's sad to say, as an adult, like my imagination is still hyperactive. But like I could be in my house alone and I just hear things.
So that's the thing, is that you live in a house. Like I'm looking for a house right now, but I live in an apartment. So like if I hear creaking and stuff, it's like it's the downstairs neighbor. I'm fine. Like I don't care. Like if I hear something, it's not just like who's there. But like I know like as soon as I'm in that kind of situation, I see a scary movie, I'm like, I'm not watching a scary movie again for a couple of years. Like I'm just gonna be like, no, I'm good. But
I mean, if I was watching it,
I would say I like putting myself in that kind of vulnerable situation where like I get scared just to almost be like, see, it's not that bad. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why people do this, but it's like, I got to be in the right mood for it. If it's nighttime, I'm like, I kind of want to watch a scary movie. And then I look outside and it's dark. I'm like, no, I'm good. Because like the minute I go to bed, I'm going to be still thinking about it.
To be fair, I have gotten into more of like the thriller, thriller horror-ish stories. It is kind of weird that I want to watch them, but then like Nicole doesn't like them at all, so I can't watch them. So maybe you and I will have some time where we can watch them together. Because there is sometimes where I'm itching to watch something like that. Because like I don't know, I'm demented up in the mind where I'm like I don't know, I kind of terrified a little bit.
Yeah. Things have been too nice for me recently. I gotta scare myself. I gotta have some nightmares.
All right, maybe you convince me. You're convincing me. Maybe we'll go watch it.
Maybe I'll chicken out and I'll tell you not to go. But we'll see.
So like I don't know, like what's the concept of that movie? Like what's supposed to be?
I honestly haven't looked into it too much. My buddy just told me it was great, so I'm like, I don't know if I want to look it all up, because part of the thing for me with scary movies is like if I know what I'm getting into when I start watching it, I'm like not as scared. So when I like all the twists and turns start happening and it's like, oh, well, it's been in his mind the whole time or something, I'm like, oh, okay, well, then nobody else could see this. Like if I just kind of know what the concept is, I'm like, eh. But if I'm in there and it's like things are happening and I don't know what's going to happen next, it keeps me on my toes. So that way when like the jump scare happens, I'm like more off, like I'm not expecting it.
Yeah, so like, okay.
They're doing another one of like, I don't know if The Conjuring, there's like The Conjuring. I think there's another one or two movies that are like Annabelle, I think, is linked to The Conjuring.
So their all of them are supposed to be linked together, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then there's like the
Nun 2.
I think there's like another Nun movie coming out too, my buddy said. And I'm like, that one scared me more, the Nun, because there was just scenes where like it's dark, someone walks into a room and there's just like a shadow in the corner, just looks like a coat or something. And then they walk by it, and it's literally just the nun standing there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I just like don't expect it.
You know what's the worst? So to answer your question real quick, so I said I can't really see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I kind of do sometimes, if I'm watching a scene, I kind of like do this. I kind of like look away a little bit.
Yeah, you're like
to where
focusing right on.
Where I peripherally can see it, sort of.
Yeah.
But I'm not like fully engaged.
That way if something jumps out or whatever, it's not like you're staring right at it when it happens. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of like oh wow, something jumped out.
I think it's like a defense mechanism for me, like, okay, if I don't look at it, it doesn't exist in my mind. or I'm just not anticipating the act of what's about to happen. Talking about The Conjuring though, you know what's worse about The Conjuring and like the Annabelle story and all that stuff is that, I mean, Hollywood had a great like adaptations of that, but it's supposed to be based on true stories from of that couple, which is wild.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like Ed and Lorraine Warren or whatever. Yeah, no, that's supposed to be all like based on actual things that have happened to them, which is terrifying. I mean, I'm not a big paranormal person where I'm scared of things like that happening, but like at the same time, like when I'm in that situation, I'm faced with it, I'm like, it's not real. Like that's not real.
Like so you don't believe in ghosts?
I don't. I mean, if I'm in a situation,
really,
there was a time when I want to say I was like 10 or something. I was at my buddy's house and there was like a hurricane warning or something at the time, and so I was just chilling at his house because I think my parents were out or whatever, and his parents were out, so we were just at the same place. And I like put some stuff by the sink. Like I think we like had lunch or whatever, and like I put like a plate next to the sink, not anywhere near the sink, like not on the opening, not half over or whatever, just like next to the sink. And the sink was empty. And I literally walked out of the room, and like 2 minutes later, we hear a plate fall in the sink. And we go back, and my plate is in the sink. We're both in the same room. And I'm like, there is no way that could have happened. It wasn't like on the edge and fell in. Like, it was literally like, if this is the sink, it was just over here. Like, not anywhere. Yeah. And I was like, there is no way. And so there's times where I'm like, how did that happen? You know, but like me having a scientific background for like college and everything, I'm like, there's got to be a way to explain it. But there are certain times where I'm like, I can't explain it. But my mind is just like, but there's no ghost, so you're good. And I'm like I just got to tell myself, I'm like, no.
So, okay.
I'll get scared thinking there's like a demon, a demonic presence or something, like running up the stairs, got to turn off the light. But like also my logical brain's like, there's nothing there. You're good. So like, it's kind of like
I think it's your defense mechanism, brother. I think it's your defense mechanism trying to protect you from that because, okay, so this is pretty weird, but like when when I lived, my grandparents, right? I was 18 and my grandfather passed away, and I remember him every night for a while. Hold on, I'm hearing a lot of feedback or something like that. Oh. Oh, are you messing with something?
No.
Oh, I'm hearing like rumblings out of a microphone or something.
No.
Oh, that's weird. That's weird. I like heard some like rumblings in my headphones.
Ghosts aren't real. Wait, what? What was that?
So when I was 18, my grandfather passed away, right? But like before bed, after dinner, like it'll be like late at night, like around like 9:00. He would always have a bowl of cereal. Mm-hmm. So I would be in like the basement watching TV on my couch, and I would always hear him open the cabinet, get a bowl and like the spoon, and like he would always like put the spoon in the bowl, so you hear like the clink noise.
Clink, yeah.
And so and then hear the cereal pour out. So this was, I don't know if it was just trauma, me dealing with like coping with my grandfather not being away, like there anymore or whatever. But I remember being on the couch. It was like 2 a.m. Mm-hmm. It was like maybe a week after he passed. Being on the couch, all of a sudden in the middle of the night at 2 a.m, I like woke up and I saw the kitchen light turn on, and I hear something go in the cabinet, get a bowl, hit the clink on the bowl, and hear cereal being poured out. So I'm like, well, who the hell will be up at 2 a.m? Because it was only my uncle at the time living in the house, my grandmother, and my sister. Mm-hmm. And I think my sister was away with her boyfriend at the time. Like, she was out, like, doing something. So I'm like, it's 2 a.m. Who the fuck is eating cereal? Maybe it was my grandmother. So I went to go check on her to see, like, if everything was okay. And, like, I go upstairs, and the light is on, but there's no one in the kitchen. There's no bowl. There's no spoon, no cereal out, no nothing. And I'm telling you, I remember this so vividly, that like hearing the sound, seeing the light turn on, seeing all this stuff happen. And then I look on the floor. Now people are going to think I'm a fucking kook, but I look on the floor and there's like water on the floor and there's footprints in the water. Like someone was there. And then the next morning I asked my grandma, like, hey, were you in the kitchen last night? She's like, no, I wasn't in the kitchen. I was like, well, 2 a.m, there was someone in the kitchen eating cereal. And, like, she, like, looked at me and, like, just left. Like, she went back to her room or something like that. It was weird, man. It was weird, dude. I'm telling you, like, when people say they don't believe in ghosts sometimes, I'm like, well, I've had so many different experiences like that where I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's weird.
I don't know. My logical brain's always trying to be like, well, could have been that. And I'm like, I don't know. The thing is, at the end of the day, there's no way to prove it. And if there is a scientific way to prove it, like, it's still not going to convince me of anything. It's not going to convince me that there are no ghosts, and it's not going to convince me that there are. I'm just going to be in a perpetual state of like, there are no ghosts, and then secretly in my heart being like, what's that in my closet? Like, just like
Yeah.
always just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not trying to freak people out. It's just weird little things for me. But I think we can end it there, man.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. We talked about a little bit of game stuff, a little bit of scary shit. You all learned more about my deep fears.
This will come in handy.
Please don't use against me. Please do not use them against me, because I will crumble into a nice little ball form as like a little child. But yeah, new episodes of the podcast obviously come out on Tuesdays, so look out for the podcast on Tuesdays. I've restarted up the gaming channel. New episodes of the gaming channel come out on Saturday. I've been trying to push out content. I've been playing a lot more PC, so you probably heard me before talk about a friend of mine who donated a PC to me, and that is this guy here, Jason. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it, man.
It's kind of the way things go. I upgraded my PC and then ended up upgrading all my parts, and so I just had an entire computer sitting around not being used, and me being me and holding on to it, I didn't really want to just like sell it or anything, so this is definitely the best option. So
yeah, so I've been preaching your praises on other episodes about it. I do thank you a lot
of course,
for doing
man.
that. It's very generous of you. So talking about horror stuff, so Jason and I have been talking about playing some horror games.
Yeah.
So you might see some content of us playing that. Talk about playing some Phasmophobia or some other stuff. You're going to see me jump and be terrified. If you haven't seen the first gaming episode of me playing Phasmophobia by myself, I was complete baby. I couldn't take it. I got through like maybe a minute in the game and died because I was just not knowing what I was doing. And yeah, so look out for the gaming channel episodes on Saturdays. There's other stuff I want to play too, like we could play some Ark or play Raft, or just start playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duelist. Been getting really into that lately because of cross platforming, so it's really fun. But yeah, so look out for that as well. The podcast you can find on YouTube. So like, comment, subscribe. As you see, Jason, wants you to leave a comment on some things.
Yeah.
Leave a comment on some horror movies that you think we should watch, or
That's also,
some games you think we should play. That'd be great to hear from you on that. Listen to the podcast in audio form on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many other options. Trust me, I am on all platforms. And other than that, thank you, Jason, for coming on.
anytime.
And as always, stay nerdy, my friends.